All right, so get ready because we're diving deep today into a really interesting corner of the internet. We're looking at this list from the top10s.com. It's called Top 10 Girls You Would Love to See Naked. And I know the title might be a little eyebrow raising, but stick with us here. We're going to unpack the psychology behind it, like the societal norms it reflects and all that, and what it says about how we see women today. The fascinating thing is it's not just random names. It's got actresses and models, singers, even a wrestler, right?
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, and the comments. Oh, the comments are something else. They go from like straight up admiration to, well, let's just say not so much admiration.
It's really fascinating to see how people react to this kind of list. It's like you're getting a glimpse into like the collective psyche, our ideas about beauty and desire, and what's okay to say, what's not okay to say when it comes to women and their bodies.
Okay, so first up on this top 10 list, Jennifer Lawrence. And you'd think, right, everyone loves her. But there's a comment calling it disgusting to want to see her naked.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's like this tension, right? Between saying someone's attractive and then like crossing that line into objectification. So can we like admire someone's beauty without just reducing them to their body? That's the big question we'll be looking at.
For sure, for sure. Okay, next we've got Kate Upton, who they describe on the list as a sex symbol, which, I mean, let's be real, that's kind of her thing, right?
Yeah, that's her brand for sure.
And there's even a comment saying that she and Olivia Wilde, they deserve to be ranked higher.
Ah, so people are like getting into the ranking system, debating, who should be where. It shows how we decide what's attractive. And those ideas, they don't just come out of nowhere. It's the media, cultural norms, even our own personal experiences.
Absolutely. So then we've got Hayden Panettiere and Amber Heard, both like big-name actresses, but no real comments to talk about. Things get a little more, let's say, specific. When we get to Megan Fox.
Oh yeah, Megan Fox from like Transformers and all that.
Right.
There's actually a comment saying she should have been naked in that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, even saying like the turtles could have been adults by then.
Interesting.
It makes you think about fantasy and reality, especially when it comes to, fictional characters and all that.
Yeah, and they even say that the turtles are only 15, which adds a whole other layer to the conversation.
Oh, wow. So where's the line between just like harmless fantasy and, things that might be a little problematic, especially with characters who are basically kids?
Exactly, exactly. All right, moving on. Things get kind of complicated with Christina Pimenova, and by complicated I mean there's a ton of backlash. The comments are just overwhelmingly negative. People calling the list disgusting, and the creator, well, some pretty harsh names.
Yeah, that's when it becomes clear, like, this list has the potential to be really harmful. Putting Pimenova, who was a minor at the time, on a list that's clearly sexualizing women, it's just wrong. It reminds us that, kids are vulnerable, and we got to protect them from being sexualized.
Definitely a line in the sand for sure. And the reactions show just how seriously people take that. Okay, so after that we've got Simone Simons, Leighton Meester, Jennifer Lopez, and Dua Lipa, all listed but no real comments. Then in the newcomers section there's K.S. Chithra and Lucy Pinder, also without any comments. Okay, moving on to the contenders, we've got Katy Perry, Keely Hazel, and then Emma Watson.
Oh, Emma Watson. I mean, she's known for Hermione Granger from Harry Potter. And there's this comment, it's pretty interesting. It talks about imagining her as the voice of Princess Daisy, and then goes on about nudity and bust size. And there's this mention of paparazzi shots that leave nothing to the imagination.
So it's that blurring of fantasy and reality again, but this time it's with someone we watched grow up on screen.
Right, exactly. It makes you think about the impact of those childhood roles, especially when they're connected to innocence. And that paparazzi comment, it's about celebrity culture, right? Are celebrities ever really off duty in the public eye?
Right, right. Okay, then we've got Anastasia Robb and Haley Williams, no comments. But then we get to Taylor Swift, and this comment is incredibly specific, like really specific about her physical attributes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it mentions height, figure, even names specific body parts.
It's like they have this blueprint for like the perfect Taylor Swift, according to them, shows the pressure on women, especially famous ones, to fit these like narrow beauty standards. And these standards, they can have real consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, then we skip over Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, no info there. And then it's Taylor Momsen, Adele, Nicole Scherzinger, no comments.
But then things get interesting with Sasha Banks, the wrestler.
Oh, yes, Sasha Banks. There's this comment connecting WWE wrestling with naked girls.
Interesting.
Yeah, whether we agree or not, it says something about how we see women in spaces that are like traditionally masculine.
Makes you wonder how female athletes are seen. Like, is it for their skill or for their looks?
It's a double standard and it's not just sports, it's everywhere. Yeah, totally. Okay, so then we've got Olivia Wilde with a comment saying she should be ranked higher. And then Constance Marie and Eva Green, no comments. And that's the end of the list.
Wow, what a ride. But now comes the really interesting part, right? What do these comments actually tell us about the bigger picture? Can we learn something from these individual reactions and apply it to this conversation about women, sexuality, and beauty?
Yeah, that's the big question. And that's what we're going to be digging into next.
Right, let's get into it.
So we went through the whole list, right? We saw the names, we read the comments. And honestly, it's a lot, right? Like it's this weird mix of opinions and desires and judgments all kind of mushed together. And I guess I'm wondering, like, what does it all mean, on a deeper level?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? Like, can we learn something about ourselves and society from a list like this? One thing I noticed, this tension between objectification and admiration. We saw it with Jennifer Lawrence, Kate Upton. It's like a recurring theme. So how do we reconcile those two things?
Yeah, because not every comment is like totally creepy and objectifying, right? Some are just like appreciating someone's beauty. So where's the line?
Yeah, that's where it gets tricky. And it's a line that's always being debated and like redefined. I think it's helpful to think about like intent. Are we focusing on the person as a whole, their personality, their accomplishments, all that? Or is it just about their body, like reducing them to just that? I think that's a big
So
difference.
it's not just the words, it's the message behind them. And speaking of messages, what about those comments that focus on like specific body parts or measurements, like that one about Taylor Swift? It felt almost like a recipe or something.
It did, yeah. It shows how deep these beauty standards run. It's not enough to just say someone's attractive. We got to like quantify it, measure it, compare it to this like ideal. And it's not just celebrities. Think about magazines, ads, even those filters on social media. They all push this very narrow idea of beauty.
And that pressure to conform, especially for young women, I mean, it can be really damaging, can't it? Like body dysmorphia, eating disorders, this feeling of never being good enough.
Yeah, it's this constant cycle, comparing yourself, criticizing yourself.
Exactly.
And that's why it's so important to challenge those standards, to promote, body positivity and all that, and to celebrate diversity, like all kinds of beauty.
For sure, for sure. But getting back to the list, there was another comment that really stuck with me. The one about Sasha Banks, the wrestler, and that whole naked girls thing with WWE.
Right, right. I think that comment, whether they meant to or not, it shows how we see women in those spaces, and, places that are usually dominated by men. It's like there's this assumption that female athletes are only there for like the male gaze, that their skill doesn't really matter.
Yeah, like they can't be strong and sexy, talented and attractive. It's got to be one or the other.
It's a double standard, and we see it everywhere, not just sports.
Totally, yeah. Okay, one more thing that really stood out to me. The whole Christina Pimenova thing.
Yeah. That's when things get serious.
Yeah.
Putting someone who is underage on a list like this, I mean, it's just not okay. It crosses a line, and it shows how dangerous it is to sexualize children.
And the comments, everyone was against it. Like, no matter what they thought about the rest of the list, this was too far.
It's due that people recognize that, right? It shows there's a limit. But it makes you wonder, how did this even happen? How did a minor end up on a list like this? And what does that say about the website itself?
Yeah, like, what about their responsibility to moderate the content, protect people?
It's a bigger conversation, about online safety, accountability, all that.
So we've covered a lot, but it feels like there's more to say. Where do we go from here?
Well, that's the next layer of the deep dive, isn't it?
Okay, let's get into it. It's wild how much came up from looking at one list. Like each name and comment, it's like a thread. And when you pull it, it unravels all these societal things.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about deep dives, right? You start with something simple, but then it takes you to these big questions, like about who we are, what we believe, how we treat people.
Totally. And for me, it's shown how widespread these issues are. The objectification, the beauty standards, the double standards. It's not just some list on a website. It's how we act every day.
Exactly. And that's where the real work starts, right? Recognizing these patterns, challenging them, pushing for a society that's more fair and respectful.
Okay, but where do we even begin? It feels like such a huge task.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming, but even small steps matter. Start with awareness. Pay attention to the messages you see, the words you use, how you treat people. Are you part of the problem or are you fighting against it?
That's a good point. We need to be more aware of our own biases.
Absolutely. And once you've done that, then you can address it on a bigger scale. Speak up when you see something wrong, support groups that are fighting for equality, use your voice to help those who aren't heard.
So it's about personal responsibility and also acting together, changing ourselves and working to change the whole system.
Exactly. It might sound idealistic, but I believe we can do it. Change happens gradually, little by little.
It's like that saying, right? Be the change you want to see.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important to note this whole conversation about beauty, it's changing. We're seeing more diversity in the media, more body positivity, more people pushing back.
That's good to hear. It gives me hope that we're moving in the right direction.
It's messy, for sure, but it's progress. Culture is always changing, evolving. So let's keep pushing for positive change. Let's keep having these tough conversations. Let's work towards a world where everyone feels valued for who they are, not just what they look like.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We started with this one list, but we ended up talking about so much more. It's been really thought-provoking and hopefully empowering, too.
Definitely. And if there's one thing I want listeners to remember, it's this: be critical, be kind, and be the change you want to see.
Great advice. Thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into this crazy, complicated world we live in.